Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of UK Edu Stories. And as you can see, it's just me, Bookie Youssef. So we've got Mark, who hasn't been feeling well this week. So Mark, I hope you get well soon, but is supporting behind the show. And I'm quite interested, not quite interested, I'm really interested actually in today's episode because it ties in with the announcements that were made on Monday by the Prime Minister with regards to England, the schools in England returning to school on Monday, the 8th of March. So it's really exciting to have our guest today, Dan Edwards, primary school head teacher, Evelyn Ford Mbe, secondary representation head teacher, and also a Governor Raj Unsworth, who are going to explain about what their schools are doing as part of the return in the next couple of weeks and their roles within it. So rather than actually just listening to me, I'm going to introduce our guests. But for those of you that have actually subscribed to the channel, thank you so much. If you haven't, please subscribe, click the notification so that every week you can actually join in with the weekly educational discussions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce our guests in one by one, actually, so that they can introduce themselves and you can hear what they've got to say. So I said one by one, but okay, tech hitch. Right. Sorry. Okay, so Dan, if we can go to you, Dan.
I don't mind. Yeah, my name's Dan Edwards. I'm primary principal of Woodstock Primary Academy. We're in Leicester, and we're in the heart of Leicester City. So we're an inner city primary school, and we serve just under 450 children. And we're also part of a small multi-academy trust, which serves the same geographic area as the primary school that I'm head at. And yeah, we've been open since obviously January with some of our key worker children, identified children, and yeah, we're, like most head teachers, I'm this week and next week is going to be really important in regards to making sure that we're all ready to go on the 8th of March. I'm really excited to be here chatting with everybody else. Really, it's going to be great.
All right, thank you so much. And at this point, I'll introduce Evelyn Ford Mbe.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Evelyn. I'm head teacher of Coptal Girls' School. It's an all-girls school in Mill Hill in Barnet, northwest London. It's 11 to 18, so we have a sixth form as well. We have just under 1,000 girls at Coptal, and it's an amazing school. Any opportunity I get to plug my amazing school, I do. So yeah, I'm a very proud head teacher of Coptal, and yes, like Dan, just kind of getting ready, gearing up for next week. Lots of planning, lots of prep. Really interested to hear other people's plans as well, but happy to share mine as well. So that's me.
Thank you so much. Well, in that case, Evelyn, I'll ask, how has this lockdown compared with the previous one, the very first one that we had in March 2020?
Yeah, I think in terms of learning, and I think that's the bit I'll focus on, in terms of the remote learning, I think it's been poles apart really, because in the first lockdown it was really hard for teachers. It was really hard in terms of trying to get the laptops out to the girls and out to students, and that whole live lessons, we weren't quite there in the first lockdown. So the second lockdown, this lockdown, I take my hat off to every teacher, because I drop into live lessons of my Coptal staff and I am like just blown away by what they're doing. So in terms of remote learning, I think that's the key difference. The key difference is we learn a lot of lessons from lockdown one. Teachers, hone their craft, finessed different platforms, and we now know how to do breakout rooms, for students. So I think that the experience, this is from a secondary, perspective, I think the experience for our children and for the staff has been so much better, so much better. So when there's lots of talk about catch up and lost learning. I do hear that, but I think it negates the fact that teachers have been teaching, so there has been learning going on. So more so in terms of the live lessons, the way that staff have been agile and being able to use platforms, I think that's very different from the first lockdown.
Okay, thank you so much. If we go over to you, Dan, what has been your experience when you compare, the first lockdown with the one we're just coming towards, we're experiencing now until the 8th of March?
Yeah, I think very similar to Evelyn, really. I think when we went into lockdown the first time, it was very new to us. We'd never experienced anything like that educationally before. It was such a massive event. And again, we were learning very much as we went through in regards to what is our role within this, and how, the terminology of key workers, having key workers on site. As a trust, as a school, we didn't have an immediate amount of key workers, to open our provision fully. So we did something quite collectively as a trust, and provided a key worker provision at one of our central secondary schools, which was great because we were able to offer a wide range of things. And again, our home learning offer was very much probably not as live as it could have been, but we created some really exciting home learning packs, and we maintained communication through social media. So we did a lot, probably, above and beyond really at that moment in time to where we were. And I think, just like Evelyn, really, I can't express my amazement enough of teachers in my school, and I know in other schools, of just how this live learning has evolved. And I think obviously getting laptops out to children, is slightly problematic, and it probably wasn't where it needs to be at the moment, but we managed to kind of cross that digital divide. But in primary school as well, we've got such a, quite a range from children who are in our nursery setting and in our early years setting as well, right up until to year 6. So having to think about how do we use digital devices to cover all of that age range, supplemented as well with maybe additional paper-based resources, was an immediate challenge. But some of the lessons, like Evelyn, that I've dropped in on, just in awe of, especially some of our younger teachers who are particularly more au fait with Teams and that technological, that knowledge of technology, being able to do it really quickly. It's just quite fascinating, quite, I'm just overwhelmed, by how adaptable we've become. But I think, looking forward towards the 8th, I think that's been a chapter in our learning. And I think everybody's very much looking forward to coming back. As I spoke to a year 3 teacher today, and I said, "Are you looking forward to coming back?" He goes, "Great, because I'm finding it very hard to teach money to year 3 children on the screen." So there's lots of things, there's lots of learning points for everybody. But yeah, I think the remote learning, and again, like Evelyn, there will be gaps, but there has also been lots of teaching that's been going on, and also very high quality teaching as well. So we can't park that to one side.
All right, thank you. Now, Raj, I will come to you in a moment, if I may. I've just got a question, because Dan and Evelyn, you both mentioned about dropping into lessons. And I know, particularly on social media, there has been some interest drawn up in that, in the fact that you have formal lesson observations taking place with remote learning, as well as drop-ins. How have you, Dan, if I might ask you first, and then Evelyn, managed it so that staff know you're just dropping in just to see how things are, but not to be stressed by it? How have you managed that process, Dan, and then Evelyn?
I think it's always been about consultation. I think right from the very early stages of lockdown, we knew that we were moving into a new phenomena in regards to teaching and learning. And I think for me, as the overseer of the quality that goes on within our school, I do have to kind of have some level of assurance that what we're doing is good. However, I think the way that we spoke together as a school team, and I would say that we approached this very much as a school team, it was about how can I make this, I suppose, more not easier, but how can we make this more streamlined, how we can make it more effective
Mm-hmm.
for our children, but also for our staff as well, about what's working, what really does make a really good remote lesson. And it's not about criticizing, it's actually about gathering that information and saying, right, well, we found this out. And it wasn't just me observing, you know, we also had lots of middle leaders and just, you know, peer-to-peer sharing as well. So it wasn't just senior leaders dropping in and snooping around, you know, switching off our cameras and just standing there. But also we gave teachers the opportunity to record some lessons as well and share recorded lessons, you know, within the sort of safeguarding framework of our school. So we all had an opportunity to share, discuss and self-assess really in a very low stakes, wasn't about, you know, it was about developing together and hopefully addressing well-being as the main port of call really.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Evelyn, before I go to
Yeah,
Raj.
but very similar to Dan, actually, and ours was very much about being supportive. It was never about a formal observation. It was very much about how can we support what's happening in the lessons, and a bit like what Dan said about younger teachers and people who know like different platforms and different tech stuff. Just so uber impressed with what we've seen. So definitely communicating and letting them know that this was going to happen over a period of time. I went a little bit radical, Dan. So I did have my camera off actually, and I went incognito. But the reason I did that was because I didn't want the teacher to see me or a member of my senior team and think, oh my God, it's ahead. This has really thrown me. So I thought being incognito, actually, there's somebody there. I don't know who it is. I'm just really going to get on with what I'm getting on with. And actually that worked really well. And the thing that we took from it was we saw such good practice. So that when we saw good practice being taught, we then pulled all of that together and we showcased it with our staff in a teaching and learning briefing, so they could see that actually this is really supportive. I've seen an NQT delivering this over there, or an experienced teacher delivering that over there. That is some gems. Those are some nuggets that I can take away with me. So not formally, not criticizing, really looking for the good and supporting where we needed to.
Oh, fantastic. I love that. Looking for the good is great. And the supportive collaborative aspect. Thank you so much, Evelyn and Dan. Right, Raj, thank you for being patient, because you wanted to raise a point earlier. What would you like to share with us in the audience today?
I was just going to say I hadn't introduced myself yet.
Apologies. Oh, my goodness.
That's all I was going to say.
Right, so sorry. Right.
Introduce myself first then. Okay. I'm Raj Unsworth. I am Chair of Governors of a three-form entry school in Bradford, primary school. I actually joined the school in the pandemic in March, and then found myself appointed chair in May. And I've been a governor trustee in education for about 25 years now, so very experienced in a lot of different settings. And actually, this is the first time that I found myself in an area which is actually very challenging. It's a very deprived part of Bradford, and we've got 600 and something plus children, nursery as well. So we have remained open throughout. And for me, I guess the challenge has been trying to get to know the staff, the head teacher, my fellow governors, and getting to grip with it in a way so that I can actually have that impact as chair. So it's really been interesting. And you were asking the question about the first lockdown and this lockdown. The difference for me is that I think the novelty is completely worn off now. I think we've all, the first lockdown, the first lockdown was more about providing childcare. And I think we were all quite naive in a way in thinking perhaps that we would get back to some kind of semblance of normality. And I think this time round, it is very different in the sense that we now know, we are wiser a year on. We know that we still haven't quite got light at the end of the tunnel. And we also know that we have been incredibly resilient, as a profession, as schools, as leaders, as governors, we have adapted. There's no more they can chuck at us that we can't deal with. And I'm really, really, really proud of the profession as a whole for that. We've all risen to the challenge.
Yes.
Whether it is last minute guidance, which has been happening all the time, whether it's getting accustomed to using different technologies, and the challenges this time around are going to be, for me personally, I think the children who have not actually been in school. We've got nursery children, they haven't even met properly. So I think that sort of thing is going to be a challenge. So from that perspective, I think we will get there, but it's a matter of keeping our confidence up, and just carrying everybody with us, whether it's parents, whether children, whether it's staff, instilling that confidence in them that we are doing absolutely the best we can in terms of the guidance we're given, making sure we're as safe as possible, providing the best education we possibly can. And actually, do you know what? It's not a race. One of the things that I always say, that I didn't actually come to the UK until I was 7, and I didn't speak English when I came here. And okay, so maybe it took me a little while to kind of, I won't use catch up because that's horrible. It implies all kinds of things. But I think we worry too much about all the terminology, the language that is being used. I think we just need to focus on getting everybody mental health wise fit for learning, if you like, and just take a little bit of time and allow school leaders that autonomy to actually decide what is best for their school. Allow the teachers to decide what is best for the children in front of them. I think it's so important, and ignore people who are hundreds of miles away trying to tell us how to do things and how to run our schools.
Easier said than done, I think, when you're being held to accountable for them. But I think, sorry to interrupt, Raj, I think what's been really powerful, and this is why I have to commend the school leaders, is the fact that they have done the very, very best that they possibly can by the students, by the staff, by the school community under such challenging circumstances. And, with what you've explained. But I'm just noting the time, can I just pose the next question? And I'll ask it to Raj, then Dan, then Evelyn, in that order. You mentioned about the fact that, we can't have any more chucked at you. And you did mention about some of the challenges that have actually been experienced. What has been particularly challenging about this term? Raj, I'll start with you.
For this term, I think it's been thinking about strategy as well as trying to support school leaders in terms of all the operational stuff. I mean, the guidance, I read the guidance as chair, just like the head teachers read the guidance, and we take all that with a pinch of salt. But for me, it's about, okay, so if we do get back to normal, the children are back, we're really looking forward to having the children back. I know the staff are looking forward to coming back. It's the balance between that strategic and the operational, and what is it? What are our plans in terms of curriculum, assessment? And obviously these are having to change all the time. As a board, we're looking at how can we best support the next academic year, if you like. And we're not saying we're writing off this academic year, but what we're saying to school is, let's take it easy, get the children in. We'll continue with the testing and things, and obviously there will be disruption as a result of that. And one of the things in Bradford is that I know the B117 variant has been prolific down south, but that's actually now hit the north. So we may well see the R rate going up. We may see more up here. So all we can do is, it's very difficult. It sounds as if we're being reactive. We're not. We're planning as best we can. But sort of midterm and long term is proving a bit more of a challenge, if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Dan, if I pose the same question to you.
Yeah, I think the overriding challenge I would say for myself and my staff, and probably for my pupils and parents, is just sheer frustration of not being able to lead the school that you want to. And I think, and it's really hard because we're obviously very much entrenched in an operational model, and I suppose we've become quite used to this operational model of having groups of, smaller groups of children in. And I think the challenge has always been about the digital kind of divide, and also recognizing that it's not just placing a laptop in a home which is the challenge. It's making sure that the digital literacy of that home and supporting parents to actually understand some of the terminology that we're using, the platforms that we're using. So really trying to make sure that our messaging has been very, very supportive, making sure that parents and pupils at home felt that they could ask questions, without any kind of embarrassment of, I don't actually know how to switch the laptop on, or how do I get this Teams going, and actually making sure that we were there all the time for everybody. And I suppose acknowledging to parents that, okay, the school might not be open for your child, but actually the school is open and we are operational and we are only at the end of the phone. Just give us a ring. So I suppose the challenge has been trying to guide people through, the digital kind of, the focus of this lockdown. But I think really just sheer frustration because, the autumn term was quite a success, because we managed to put really, good measures in place, safe measures in place. And we were very lucky as a school. We kind of were able to steer through without any kind of large number of cases. So we were very fortunate. And I think, sometimes that's out of luck, but it's also about sometimes the measures you put in. And I think we were, as our journey of school improvement, this term was going to be, the term. When we come back after January, we've kind of worked out, tweaked our things that didn't go as well as they wanted in autumn. When we get back in January, we're going to crack on. And then that horrible stall in your strategic improvement, and that question of is, you just feel like the rug has been pulled under your feet a little bit. So you want to improve that school for your children, you want to make it the best for your staff, but there's that horrible thing of actually the operational kind of takes over, and the strategic can still go on, probably behind the scenes, but that chance of implementing it and seeing it in practice, in a normal circumstance, in normal circumstances, is hard, because as every school leader and every teacher and everybody who works in a school is just chomping at the bit to move on to the next bit, to get that routine going, or that new assembly, or that break time, or really see the new lunchtime routine working so we can get it the best for our children. So I think frustration, but also probably a lack of foresight in regards to the digital literacy support that we may have needed to make sure that people were really up to speed. And maybe that was a national oversight, I suppose. That it was
I agree. I totally agree with you.
Get the laptop out, but actually quite a lot of learning, So I think just frustration. But like Raj says, we're hopefully moving to a place where there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay, thank you so much, Dan. Evelyn,
and I think
this term.
I think, Dan, you've ended just where how I feel, and I think the challenge for me, and I think for us as a school, was not knowing when the end was in sight. And it was those winter months. It was hard sometimes to keep staff and students motivated. It was because we just never really knew when, and things were so dismal, the R rate was going up, and, the press were giving teachers a hard time, and that kind of can affect you as a school leader, and you begin to question your place in this. So I think the challenge for me was really trying to keep staff and students motivated. And, it's really hard with young people behind a screen and, sometimes not interacting. Teachers would be talking and saying, put something in the chat, or just tell me how you're doing, girls. And sometimes there'd be stony silence. That the challenges around what's happening behind that screen, and the mental health and well-being of our young people, and the amount of time that they were spending in front of a screen. I found that really, really disheartening. I know it has to happen, and we've got to teach our children somehow. But I think that it's winter and it's dark and it's, so had it been the summer, it'd been quite easy to say, right, close your laptops. Let's kind of, if you can run in the garden, go on the balcony, go on your front door, do something and come back, So I think that was a challenge. I think the challenge of not knowing when the end was coming, knowing that there were some of my girls behind a screen who were really struggling. And even though we're offering, online counselling, telephone counselling, it's just not the same. And so I just want them back. We just want them back in school so that we can meet their needs. And I agree with Raj. I don't talk about catch up. I'm just, let's bridge whatever gaps there are. We will focus on the academic side of things. But for me, I think about the well-being of, their mental health, how being at home for like 3 months has, could really have impacted a significant number of young people. So I'm very keen to get them back in. Not going to talk about assessments the minute they walk in the door. We're going to talk about, what do you need from us so that we can help you to begin to kind of get back into school life and what that means.
Okay, brilliant. That leads neatly on to my next question in that case, and I'll start with you, Evelyn. What challenges do you foresee as the school reopens for more students as they come on site? So you mentioned about the mental health aspects as well. Are there any additional challenges that you foresee?
I think it's just like at the end of any holiday, when they come back in the summer, in September, and sometimes they forget things, and they forget about, the rules and so on and so forth. And I think a challenge is going to be just kind of reacclimatizing, our girls to routine. Because a lot of young people have not had routine. And, as much as they may have been logging on, they could have been logging on in bed, and then just kind of typing away. So I think a challenge is going to be for my girls, really, is about getting back into the routine of school and the high expectations we have, because we won't lower our expectations. I want the very best for them. So I think that might be a bit of a challenge. And I was talking to my senior team tonight, and we were talking about any challenges that staff might face. And I think there's a level of anxiety amongst staff as well, because remember, staff have not been in the building for, since Christmas, and they've got their own anxieties about COVID. We haven't had the vaccine. We're not top of the list. So they're coming into a classroom of, 30 girls, they're going to be running from bubble to bubble as well. So not only are we going to be managing the return for students, looking out for their well-being, making sure they're reacclimatizing to what it means to be in a school building, I also think, it's about staff as well. And I've said to my team, let's look out for, anybody who appears to be struggling a bit, because, our role as school leaders is to make sure that our staff can be the very best that they can be, because if they're not great, the kids are not great. So you've got, a whole school community that you need to hold. And you need to hold the parents, because the parents will be sending their daughters into school, and they will also be worried about, COVID, the vaccine, testing, all of that. So, it's a huge job, and we've got to look after ourselves. Because if we're not well as school leaders, we can't hold our staff, we can't hold our children, and we can't hold our communities. So, just that reintegration, I think, is going to be a bit of a challenge.
Okay, thank you so much, Evelyn. Dan, if I pose the next question, it's the same question to you.
Again, I think very similar to what Evelyn has just mentioned. I think it's about pace. I think it's about making sure that you don't go too quickly, and you recognise that, like Evelyn has said, children have been out of school for a while. There needs to be acclimatisation into just behaviour for learning, and to just make sure that they feel safe, they feel settled. back in their classrooms, knowing, re-establishing the routines, having all of those things. And it's quite, it's very much like, although it's a lot longer than a summer holiday, but when you come back on the summer, come back from a summer holiday, typically those first few weeks are about just establishing the culture again, re-establishing the culture of the school, keeping those expectations high, and also as well making sure that there's a real culture psychologically for children to feel safe, to feel they can talk openly and to share conversations with their peers, conversation with their teachers, and also as well just enjoy being back at school. Because what's come along with all of this is obviously that there's lots and lots of press, which has been very, very frightening for young children, especially for those primary school children who probably can access the news but really comprehend actually what it means on a national and international scale. We have to help them navigate some of those fears and worries, and I think that's really important. And again, very much like Evelyn, I know that my staff have been working tirelessly behind the scenes, and the remote learning carries a different sense of exhaustion than the classroom. But I spoke to one of my teachers today, and we were just talking about the plan for the 3 weeks and then the Easter break and what it's going to look like. And there's a real acknowledgement that actually that first week back for teachers is going to be exhausting, because this is, teaching from behind a screen. It's very different to being in the classroom, being, kinetic, frenetic, being in there, break duties, all of those things. So it's about rebuilding and reclimatizing, building that pace, building that stamina back up, in order to, if there is any need of really kind of looking at gaps and making sure that they need to be there, you're not going to find them with children who feel unsafe.
That's very true.
You're not going to find them where children are feeling frightened to converse or talk with their teachers. So again, it's that thing of culture first, and then you'll be able to find the gaps. You're definitely then. Let's get the safety back. Let's make sure that children feel safe, warm, that family comes back in, and then we can move forward.
Absolutely agree. I think a challenge, just to add before I share some comments from our guests who've joined us this evening, is the fact that, getting, making sure where students and staff are, keeping them safe in that regard, then we'll have the Easter break. So you've got another discontinuation then, and then you have to come back to it again. Dan,
I think actually it serves as a quite nice timely point to it, because I think actually, there's something, whether it was foreseen, I'm not quite sure, but the fact that you've got those 3 weeks of just re-establishing, just getting children back into learning, then you can have those 2 weeks of, and then when you come back into that summer term, hopefully the summer term might look different again in regards to the restrictions. We don't know. The thought of actually having some semblance of a sports day, or some semblance of a year 6 performance, or something towards the end of the term, is actually quite joyous. And I'm kind of giddy with excitement about a sports day. But I think, these 3 weeks up until Easter are really nice, because it's this sort of gently in, but it's hopefully then thinking about that when they come back in the summer term. So it would be nice to have a long interrupted stretch, but it's that kind of, gentle 3 weeks in, and then we go from there. So who knows?
Right, thank you, Dan. No, thank you. Okay, Raj, before I pose the questions, because I know that you had your hand up to speak.
Yeah, I think for me, this is about recognising that all the children and the staff will have had very different experiences in the past 10 months or so. So I think there is no one-size-fits-all solution in terms of getting everybody back to where they should be within any set time frame. I think they're absolutely right in terms of the comments on pace, in terms of taking our time. I think the first focus has to be the well-being and mental health of both the staff and the students. And in order to get this right, we have to work very, very closely with parents, particularly in primary. I think we need to work with parents so we better understand what the challenges, there may be particular challenges these children are facing. I mean, I'm thinking of our own community where we got 90% BAME. And I know that a lot of the children will have lost family members, grandparents, and they all live together. So there are a lot of different challenges. This is why I say I think it's so important that school leaders and boards get to decide what happens.
Yeah.
We don't want, we're not going to have all children all in at the same time, all absolutely where we need them to be, even after the first 2 weeks. We've just got to take it slowly. Look out for make sure the staff are ready, the morale is where it needs to be, that we address any issues around COVID anxiety.
Yeah.
And there is quite a lot of that around. There still is quite a lot of that. And I think we need to make sure that the communication, the channels are open for communication. Where the staff want to talk to somebody, that the children, and this is crucial actually, children always think the adults have all the answers. Well, we don't in this case. We don't have the answers. So, and I think it's so important for us in front of the children to be able to say, well, actually, yeah, it's okay to feel the way you feel. Yeah. And then sort of talk about it. And hopefully long-term wise, this will actually help children and staff to articulate and be a bit more open about how they're feeling. I think that is so, so, so important, because let's not forget, I mean, I don't mean to be negative, but what happens if this happens again? What lessons have we learned here? How are we going to manage it? Because this is one virus. What happens if it happens again?
Oh, God forbid.
No,
Okay, good question. No, but very good question and
we've learned a
considerations.
lot. We've learned a lot of lessons, and we'll take those with us.
Okay, thank you so much. Right, so a question to pose. Thank you, Amy Jeatley, and everyone who's actually made comments this evening. So from Amy Jeatley, what will the guests be doing to support their staff in their school? Is there anyone who would like to jump in with a response for Amy's question?
I'm quite happy to kick off. I think one of the things that we've been doing all the way through the kind of the pandemic has just been consulting all the time and having an open platform where we can say, not just an open platform, say, how are we?
Yes.
And that's anonymized through consultation. And that's been really powerful, because what we've been doing is we've been able to notice the kind of you can read the room a lot more when sometimes it's anonymized, and people feel comfortable just to share their comments. So that's been really positive. Again, one of the things that we're really looking at is, we've got dedicated mental first aiders now for adults and teaching staff, which is something that we're investing in to create a space, particularly a safe space within our school where staff can go, and to arrange an appointment with a mental health first aider. But also, as well as a trust, we have a number of packages that, like most schools, that our members of staff can access. But I think for us, it's really about understanding that we've really considered what has made the boat go faster. And really, do we need that staff meeting? Do we need that briefing on a Monday morning? Do we really need these things? Because we've actually managed to do well considerably, strategically and operationally, without the necessity to have these, tropes of kind of the primary calendar that we've just inherited, because there was a staff meeting there. Well, we always have staff meetings on a Monday. But what if we didn't have staff meetings on a Monday? What if we just kind of went, you know what, let's have a extended twilight every 3 weeks and have something really purposeful. So really thinking about our the 1265, really thinking about our staff, well-being through the channels of procedure and policy, rather than just kind of a tap on the head on a Friday afternoon and there's some donuts in the staff room and everybody's okay. Really thinking about how well-being is embedded within our policies and procedures across the school for more sustainable well-being.
Yeah, so, thank you for that. And it's interesting as well. I think one of the few positives about COVID is the fact that it's enabled us to step back and really identify what really matters and what really makes a difference. So thank you for kicking off with that, Dan. Raj or Evelyn, would you like to respond to
I
Amy's question before we move on?
For me, when we talk about staff, it's not just about teachers. I know probably teachers listening in, but it's actually all school staff. We have 86 plus staff, 33 teachers, the rest are non-teaching staff, and they have the same anxiety, they'll have the same concerns, and because we're one big team, everybody needs to know that there is someone they can turn to.
Yeah.
So we have what Dan just described in terms of support mechanisms that are there. But I think the other thing we have to recognise is that we're not always necessarily the best people to help and support staff. So our job is also to signpost, to make sure that staff can access. Our local NHS, we have been able to access support for staff so they can have a one-to-one session, free session, and to sort of talk about their particular circumstances. Because, like I said earlier, you know, every single member of staff, as well as children, families, their own circumstances will be different. And none of us are in that position to be able to necessarily provide the support they need. So I think it's about signposting, and there is an awful lot out there. But longer term, I think what would be fantastic is if the government could kind of get some money from the money tree to support our, teachers, all of our staff, so that we can carry on doing what we're doing. They need to recognise they need to invest in the mental health of children and staff as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Raj. Okay, so before we move on, thank you, Kieran, for joining us this evening. Dan is speaking so much sense. Sustainable is essential. So it's great to hear that a lot of the key messages and things you can put in place is actually resonating with our audience. So next question, what key messages will you be sharing with the families of the children about the return to school? Evelyn, if I start with you, then Dan, and then Raj.
Well, I haven't planned any, so I just think off the top of my head, you know, I think the first key message is how excited we are to welcome back their daughters to school. I would also, a key message will be around how safe the school is. So just that reassurance with families that we have a robust risk assessment in place, because I think that will hopefully alleviate some of the families' anxieties. So we're delighted to have them. It's a safe space to come back. The other key message, which I've already alluded to, is that, you know, I'm going to be really focusing on their mental health and well-being, you know, and I'm just going to let them know that we are going to, you know, look after their daughters, care for their daughters, you know, look out for any, you know, gaps that we need to bridge with them. But, you know, overall, the key message is let's get going again. You know, let's get your daughters back into school so that, you know, staff can do what they do best. And that is, you know, teach great lessons, and we deliver excellent pastoral care at Coptal. So those would be my key headlines for now, I think.
Okay, thank you, Evelyn. Dan?
Again, very similar. I think it's about making sure that we, you know, ensure that parents feel that they're bringing their children back to a safe space. And importantly as well, I think for us, one of the key things for our community is that we've really developed a really strong relationship with our parents. And like most schools during this time, I'm sure that's been quite the case. But I think there's always so many questions around this, and there has been from the start, and you know, perpetuated through social media, lots of fake news that's out there, and you know, lots of messaging on social media. So I think really making sure that we're transparent in our own understanding of the next step, and not over promising and not saying, well, you know, it's all going to be fine, etc., etc. Making sure there is a reality to what's going on, and we still might have to self-isolate children. We might still have to do all, you know, close bubbles and all of those things, but also allow parents to still have a conversation where they ask questions themselves and say, actually, we've heard this. Is this actually a reality, or is this just some, you know, other bit of speculation or scaremongering? So being very open and trying to address any problems that we have all the way through the next few weeks, because there will be, again, a sense of fear about coming back to school. So it's about making sure that we give our parents confidence to come back, but also making sure that, you know, acknowledging ourselves that we still, you know, we still don't know where, you know, as much as we've got a timeline proposed for us, we still don't know where it's going to end. You know, we're hoping that we reach these key milestones. So really making it aware to parents that we're actually going through this together, and being consultative, making sure that contact is regular and is transparent and forward facing, and taking each step as it comes.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. Raj, have you got any thing that you'd like to add to that before we post some questions from the audience?
I think for me, actually, the most important thing out of this for our family is that just like the rest of us, they will watch the news, they will read the press, and they will read some of the negativity out there and the language that's been used. You know, the children are falling behind, we've got lost generation, all that sort of thing. And I think what's really, really is important is that we explain to the parents what we put in place. We explain to the parents that we are working with them and they mustn't really listen to this language because it is negative. I know a lot of our parents are worried because they're thinking, oh my God, you know, my child is so far behind, they miss so much education, etc., etc. So I think the key thing here, aside from everything else in terms of making sure schools are safe and everything else, the fact that we are working with our parents. We will be open and transparent with them in terms of what we're doing. It's a partnership. We can't do it on our own. The children are not at school 24 hours a day. So, you know, it's stressing that it's a partnership approach and also saying that, look, you know what, if anything changes, the door's open. Please feel free, you know, contact us. We'll work with you. Whatever your circumstances, just to get that confidence, the parental confidence, get the children to be more confident, the staff will be confident, and hopefully over time we can get back to some sense of, you know, the new normal.
New routines. Thank you so much. What's really great, even though we've got preset questions, is the audience are asking questions as well. So we've got 2 questions for you now. Again, thank you again, Amy Jeatley. Do the guests think it will be an idea to also remind parents of routines and expectations too? I think that's a brilliant question, Amy. Thank you for sharing that. Who from our guests would actually like to respond to that first?
I'll go.
Okay, you can go.
I'll go with that one. Yeah, I agree. I think because reminding them of the routines and expectations will actually help them reacclimatise and really remind them of what the expectations are. And, you know, there are some clear things in the guidance as well around attendance. So really communicating that to families, I think, is important. So, yeah, absolutely. And I think Dan, you know, mentioned about communication. I think there's no harm in over communicating and just, you know, signposting families to your website where your policies are, what the expectations are, and going back to what Raj said, we're working in partnership. So as we over communicate, the families get the message, the young people get the message, and then hopefully that will make the return to school a bit easier for everybody. So 100% agree.
Right, thank you. Raj, were you going to say something before I pose the question to Dan? Okay.
I think the parents and children who were already in school, yes, we need to remind them of routines and expectations, and actually making sure that there is more routine at home as well. Because, you know, children have probably been, I'm not saying they've been running amok, but they have probably had rather more freedom than they would have had otherwise. But most importantly, the children who have joined school in September or joined nursery in September, it's actually for those parents to understand the culture, the ethos and values of the school and the routines and expectations for the new children that have come through. I think that's really, really important.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. We have some more points. Thanks, Tej Jutla, for joining us this evening. I think it's very important that everyone knows what the end goal is too. I know we want to make sure everyone wants to come back to a safe space, but I think we should also be thinking about the end goal. He then goes on to say, what do we want for these kids? We need everyone believing the vision of what we're going to do for them. And he just poses again to our 3 guests, is this something we're thinking about? And I think subliminally from what you've actually shared, it is. How are you doing anything in addition to that to make it really clear, I suppose, in terms of re-establishing routines and expectations with parents and students, that you also do this with staff, that they're on board with the vision? Is there anything that you're doing specifically to aid this?
I'm not quite sure. I think really, if it's about sort of re-establishing vision with staff, I think it's about making sure that we look at, again, going back to the conversation we had earlier about, really looking at our practices in school and our messaging and our staff meetings and all of those structures that we've had in place.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's about making sure that we do reorientate our staff as well with kind of what our values are and where we're going and what the drivers, where do we need to be, because that socially distant inset day that we had at the beginning of August seems a very long way away. And I always remember it because I remember putting out 60 chairs in the hall with a little bottle of hand sanitizer on every single one. But, it was very much a long time ago. So just refocusing and just making sure that people know what it is we're moving forward towards and where we're going as a team. Because, again, I think, a lot of time has been kind of, not lost, but I suppose a lot of time has been away from each other as a team, working in small pockets of groups. So having that kind of team together, that kind of, bit of a group hug again of this is where we're going, I think is important, because it just gives people a bit more of a focus of that child-centered approach of what we want to do. These are the reasons why we're doing it, and just establishing the why again.
Yeah.
Because it just narrows people's focus down and again, keeps people safe in regards to what they think they have to do, rather than worrying about a myriad of things that they possibly don't need to do.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. Evelyn, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think that, if I'm going back to the comment, if it's we need everyone believing the vision, what we're going to do for them, if we're thinking about academic outcomes as well, nobody's forgetting that. And with the guidance that's just landed in our doors in terms of GCSEs and A levels, we can't get away from that, 100%. So I do think, yes, we will remind the children that, what's the purpose of education? We want the very best for you. So yes, I think every school leader has got a lens on, those gaps and, analysing the data. What are we going to do? How are we going to use the national tutoring programme? How are we going to use this enhanced pupil premium funding? At my school, we're definitely going to look at it and, carve it up, academically, looking at how we use tutoring, but also, am I going to spend it on some, mental health support? Am I going to put some more additional wraparound pastoral care in place? So yes, absolutely. I do think we establish the vision, we get the culture, we get the routines. And then, once you've got the routines, what is the purpose of children being in a building? Yeah, it is that kind of outcome that we do want them to be the best that they can be. And I think it's just reminding them that they are resilient, they are remarkable young people, and they will be able to, be the best that they can be. It might just take us a little bit longer, but we will get there for them. So I agree with that comment in terms of reminding them about the end.
Okay, thank you, Evelyn. Okay, so just share that comment from Amy Jeatley before we go on. I can't believe we've got about 8 minutes left of tonight's episode. So Raj, I'm going to pose another question for you specifically as a governor. What role should governors play as schools reopen?
I think the role that they pretty much have been playing. I know that I've been pretty much full time. I've been on the end of the phone. I've been on the end of email. I've been a listening ear. I've been somebody to act as a sounding board in terms of, this situation is new to all of us. And as I said earlier, no one has all the answers. So I think as chair, it is actually being available to the head teacher, the SLT, in terms of providing guidance, support, being that sort of, I don't like that term critical friend. It's horrible. I've never liked it. I think I just prefer...
Do you have an alternative to that term?
just prefer, being there to listen to any ideas, listen to frustrations. There've been a lot of frustrations, and working through solutions, thinking about what the options are. And I think in terms of that strategic operational thing, I'm not a massive fan of that, because I think that there is so much overlap. There are areas that having a discussion with someone who's that little bit divorced from school day-to-day life but actually who has got a lot of other skills from personal life. I mean, I'm an HR professional, and I've also run my own business as well. And I'm absolutely, you know, people management is my thing. So having that sort of opportunity to discuss these things with someone outside. I mean, you know, principals, head teachers have had to get accustomed to the whole public health thing. You know, there's so many different areas that they don't necessarily, or have not necessarily had the opportunity to before. So I think we do that, and behind all of that, we carry on making sure that whilst the school leaders are busy doing the day-to-day, and we can actually focus on the longer term as well. I mean, that last question, which we weren't sure whether I wasn't sure whether it was about the children or whether it was about the staff, but either way, I think that we have learned so many lessons in the last year that maybe now is a really, really good time to get the whole school community at some point together to look at what is it that we really do value. You know, instead of just repeating what we've had before, it may be that what you had before was absolutely fine, but it may be that now is a good time to reevaluate that and reaffirm what it is that we value for children and for the staff as well, in terms of involving them in the future of the school and its community.
Okay, thank you, Raj. A lot of really key points being made tonight. So we've got another question from our audience. El Afrin, hope I'm pronouncing your surname correctly. How will you build on the progress that has been made with using technology to support learners as part of remote learning? Any of our guests who'd actually like to respond to that?
Yeah, I don't mind.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
I think one of the things that we try to really maintain is our, you know, our moving forward in our curriculum has been really important, and I think we've been really working hard to ensure that we've had a high take up in regards to our online learning and lessons. However, you know, the idea of trying to ascertain the success rate of some of those lessons, you know, we know that they've been engaging, we've had children online and all of those things, but I think you only come back into the classroom to see it possibly in practice, you know, face to face and on paper that you can see. So I think we will be spending a lot of time really thinking about, from the assessment that we've been doing through remote learning, through, you know, the uploading of work, to making sure that those, you know, interactive conversations that we've been having, you know, to support assessment during then, we can very hopefully make quite a sharp analysis of those children that we need to really kind of continue on the same path, because there will be, you know, children who have just carried on, and I think, you know, have moved on through this, and I think we will get to see, I think, when children come back, those children who we may have had not a suspicion, but that understanding that we know that those children may need that additional support. So I think, going back to my previous comment, I think if we can really look at the culture of the school that we establish when we do come back, hopefully the difference between some of the children within each year group will be identified. But I think just a point on this is, you know, when we talk about progress, it's where we're progressing to is a really important question, especially in primary education, because we don't, you know, we obviously have our key statutory markers in year 1 and year 6, but where is the destination for the end of year 3? Where is the destination for the end of year 4? So it's about making sure that we have some sense of agreement, you know, I think possibly nationally as well, about what it is we're expecting to see a year 3 child do. Because I think since the removal of APP, you know, especially in primary language, everybody went away and invented their own assessment systems, and someone was a 3+ or a working towards 1, or they were a B6-3. So we need to really define what it is we're all working towards in regards to these interim years, because if not, we are at a risk of creating even more discrepancy on an individualized school basis. So we might be saying, well, they're year 3, but actually if we've made our own markers nationally, you know, across the school, we're at kind of real risk of creating even a greater gap between these children if we don't have some semblance of, you know, linkage between each year group, within each year group, and what we're progressing to.
Yeah, good point there. Thank you. Evelyn.
Yeah, I
How
think just one thing very, very quickly, I'm conscious of the time. I think what this lockdown has taught us is that, if a young person cannot be in the classroom, they can still learn from home. So with your
Absolutely.
school refusers, with your children who are long-term sick, I think what this has given us is a real insight into actually we can do this. Yeah.
Mm.
So we can provide them with the laptop. They can be at home. They can still be accessing the learning. And therefore, bridging those gaps will not be as hard when they return.
Mm.
And I think that's a real positive from this.
Thank you so much. Raj, any points you want to make in the last closing minute of tonight's discussion?
I think given how far we have come in terms of recognition of the use of technology in teaching in the last year, it would be such a shame not to grab this and maybe have some kind of a national sort of strategy on ICT and the use of technology. And there's a whole load of other stuff out there that we can actually use in terms of, somebody put something about digital awareness, and I think that's really important. We mustn't lose this. We must grab this and think about new ways of teaching, not necessarily just that one-to-one face-to-face. There has to be other options, but I'd love to see a national strategy. I really would.
Thank you. Yes, and I think there's been a call for that since last year, so that there is consistency and more uniformity, I suppose, across the educational sector. But we draw to a close. I cannot believe we could have gone on for a considerable amount of time with the amount of questions. Thank you so much, Dan Edwards, Evelyn Ford, Raj Unsworth, and our audiences for engaging with today's episode. It's been really great. And please make sure that you follow the UK Edu Stories channel on YouTube and subscribe so you can receive the notifications. Next week, we're going to speak to 3 more educators to find out and continue with this discussion about how they're preparing and how things are going as we prepare in England for the return to school. So take care, everyone. Keep safe and have a good evening. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.